When Troy hit the theaters in 2004, it was hyped to be an all-time great movie. $185 million, if not more, was pumped into the making of it. It had all the star power such as Brad Pitt, Brian Cox, and other such movie stars, and generally looked like one of those epic movies such as Lord of the Rings, Gladiator, or Braveheart that would go on to win several Oscars and be remembered as one of the finest of all time. Ultimately, the movie is remembered as maybe above average. It's not very well reviewed. It's generally looked at as a overhyped, overbloated movie that, while not bad, like say Waterworld, just isn't that good. I saw it in the theaters when it first came out, and I remembered liking it quite a bit. Recently, I caught it on the on-demand selection of movies when I was searching through for something to watch. I rewatched it, and I liked it quite a bit again. So I'm going to do a review of this movie to talk about why I think it's better than most people give it credit for. To begin, Troy is a retelling of Homer's Iliad. However, one reason why it's not looked upon as a great movie perhaps, and one reason why many people didn't like it very much, and perhaps one of the most controversial things about it, is how much it deviated from Homer's tale of the fall of Troy. A frequent comparison this movie draws is to The Doors by Oliver Stone, another movie that was taking supposedly true events but changing them to make it more suitable for a movie-going audience. I will concede that Troy is very much different from the Iliad, and I haven't even read the Iliad. I just know enough to know that there are huge differences. I just don't really care. I'm not some Greek mythology buff, for one, so I'm not going to watch this movie expecting it to be completely faithful to Homer's tale. So I'm just willing to sit back and enjoy the movie for what it is, and I really think I did. Second of all, it's not like Homer's Iliad is 100% faithful to real events that actually happened. I mean, I'm sorry, I just don't believe in that stuff. I don't believe that there was a man named Achilles who was the son of a goddess who was immortal for all but his left heel or whatever. So basically what I'm trying to say is, it's not like these events are true. In The Doors, I kind of see it. That was supposed to be somewhat of a biography on Morrison's life, and it ended up being very much fiction. But those events actually happened, and some people were disappointed that they weren't actually told. This is just Greek mythology, and maybe you'd want to see a faithful adaptation of a work of fiction, but it would be fiction either way, so I just don't care that much. So, for the purposes of this review, I'm not going to be talking about the differences between Troy and the Iliad. There are thousands of people out there who are more qualified to do that than me, and I personally just don't really care. So we're going to look past all of that stuff and review this movie. The movie begins with King Agamemnon, played by Brian Cox, in Thessaly, Greece, with his army. Also present at that location is the Thessalonian king, who has his own army there, trying to push Agamemnon out of his lands. Initial dialogue indicates that Agamemnon has been taking over as many regions as he could over the last period of time, using his massive army and great force to take over as much land as he possibly can, and Thessaly is just next on the list. Both kings decide to agree to let their two best warriors fight for the right to Thessaly. The Thessalonian king presents his greatest warrior, named Bogrius, a giant who throws spears. But Agamemnon's best warrior, Achilles, apparently slept in a little bit, and he's not at the battleground. It is here we're introduced to the fact that Achilles really doesn't like Agamemnon much, and is only fighting his battles because he has to fight for somebody. We see throughout this scene, as he is woken up and is eventually dragged out onto the battlefield, he just doesn't like Agamemnon, and this is going to be a relationship that will be explored in further detail as the movie goes along. Regardless, Achilles agrees to the fight, and this scene is regarded as hands down the best of the movie by almost everyone who saw it. This scene became the signature scene of the movie. My mom and dad, who did not like this movie very much, loved this scene. What a better way to open the movie. You could talk about this scene for quite a while. You can watch it 5 times in a row. If you're watching it at home, you'll probably rewind a few times so you can watch it again. It's just very simple, very straightforward, but there's something great about it. I'm not going to describe what happens beyond the very much obvious, but you really need to watch this scene if you're not going to watch the movie. After Achilles easily wins the fight, we cut to Sparta, where Prince Hector and Prince Paris, both of Troy, are negotiating a peace between Troy and Sparta. We have more big names here. Obviously, Achilles is played by Brad Pitt. Most of you probably already knew that. Prince Hector is played by Eric Bana. Paris is played by Orlando Bloom. Helen is played by Diane Kruger, who was not really a big name at the time, but has become more or less one. And Menelaus, the king of Sparta, I believe, is played by Brendan Gleeson. However, even as this peace is being negotiated, we see that Paris is fooling around with Helen, who is Menelaus' wife. What Helen sees in Paris in this particular movie, I'll never figure out, but that's really a discussion for another time, and is more of a problem with the casting, which I will talk about later on. So the two princes, having negotiated their peace, leave for their hometown of Troy, but Paris manages to smuggle Helen out of Sparta and take her with him. And this is going to be the event that sparks everything that comes afterwards. While it's important to note that Helen was not fond of Menelaus anymore and is much happier with Paris, again, I just don't understand it, but whatever, it's important to remember this. Prince Paris started this war because he couldn't keep it in his pants. That's basically what it comes down to, and it's something that needs to be kept in mind as we get to the end of the movie. And so, the brokering of peace that put to an end a war that had been going on for years and years gets broken in a couple days by some horny guy. After some initial anger, eventually Prince Hector and King Priam realize that Paris really does love this woman and won't let her go back. So ultimately they decide to keep her and accept whatever consequences will come. And Agamemnon just loves all this stuff that's going on. He's Menelaus' brother, and he's been dreaming of conquering Troy for many, many years, and finally has the excuse to invade them. And so Agamemnon sends Odysseus, played by Sean Bean, another fairly big name, to try and convince Achilles and his men to fight on the side of Agamemnon. Achilles actually likes Odysseus quite a bit, but is still slightly wary about this whole war and whether or not he should participate at all. Also in this scene, we meet the fourth Hanson brother. I mean, Patroclus, Achilles' cousin. They're training together wherever it is they live. He's really a tough character to take seriously in this movie because, again, he looks like the lost Hanson brother. And come to think about it, in this movie, Paris looks like the lost Jonas brother or something, so I'm sorry. They needed to get a slightly different look for these guys. I don't know. So Achilles decides to ask his mother. Now, in the Iliad, or in most tales regarding Achilles, his mother was a goddess. In this movie, she's in human form, or she's just a human. It's hard to say. The implication is she is a goddess in human form, but you can make whatever interpretation you would like, I suppose. Anyway, he asks her whether or not he should participate, and she has only this to say. If you participate in this war, your name will be remembered forever as one of the greatest warriors to ever live, but you will never return home and you will never see me again. Should you stay here, you will have a happy, peaceful life, meet a wonderful woman, have children, who will then have children, and they will all love you. But when you are dead, and your children are dead, and your children's children are dead, and so on and so forth, you will be forgotten. Now, in this scene, it's never explicitly stated that Achilles will die in the Battle of Troy, but it's heavily implicated that he will die in this fight. So he decides to accept that fate and join the battle. Also with him are his 50 Myrmidons. First I thought they were talking about mermaids, which would be kind of wacky, but they're called Myrmidons, and I suppose you could most likely compare them to the Spartans in 300. A highly organized, highly efficient group of warriors who fight together and really know how to get the job done better than any other soldiers you could find out there. So, Troy prepares to defend themselves from the oncoming attack that they obviously know must be coming, with the knowledge that no enemy force has breached their city walls before. The scale in these scenes are great. We see wide shots of the city of Troy and the army that's going to defend them. There are a lot of people here. We also see some wide shots of the sea as the boats are crossing them. It looks like there must be 1,000,000 boats out there, all transporting a ton of soldiers. It's going to be an epic, epic fight. However, here's an interesting question for you. Who are you going to root for here? This movie is trying really, really hard to make Agamemnon seem like the unlikable bad guy. It's kind of hard to root for Troy when they started this whole thing because a prince stole one of their women. And Achilles is pretty much just a cold-blooded killer who fights because he feels like it. So who's the good guy here? I think this is one reason why this movie just wasn't Oscar-winning material. There's no clear-cut hero to root for, and it's really hard to pick sides here. I think it's more than anything up to personal opinion.